Hey, so we've all encountered the why is X in this? That's not realistic person in fantasy spaces, right? And, 9 times out of 10, X is LGBT, any form of diversity, women, people of color, or disabled people in prominent positions, or sometimes it's characters in those categories just existing, right? Because it's not realistic if they exist or they're there, it's just propaganda. Well, we're talking about that argument and why I absolutely hate it today, especially in fantasy spaces. First though, let's talk about the art. The art in this video is footage from the print for January's Patreon Mail Club, and the theme was fresh snow, and the composition for this gave me fits, honestly. The characters in the piece are from the modern group for my project Trace, which coming up soon you guys are going to see a few more things from not just Trace, but some of my other little side projects too, because I'm still deciding which one I want to actually sit down and do a comic for. Because I really want to do a comic, I just haven't decided which one I want to do it for yet. But anyway, with this, like I said, the composition gave me fits, but I ultimately really like the end result. Making the designs for the prints for my mail club, even though this is only the second one, it's already forced me to get more experience with composition and backgrounds and environments. And I'm honestly really glad I'm doing it, because those are things that I've needed to work on, and this presents a really good opportunity where it's just, okay, you're gonna have to sit down and do this whether you want to or not. And I've been actually finding myself enjoying it more, so I am glad for it. Now that said, if you want this print or the 2 stickers that go with it, check out my Patreon link down below. And now, back to the video. So like I said, we've all met that person, right? And I can't stand them. There's a lot of different reasons, but a lot of it comes down to, why are you so focused on realism when the setting is fantasy? When the setting is fiction? And admittedly, I do want to say this, recently I've mostly seen it with Baldur's Gate 3, and a lot of it has been focused around the game being, Alphabet Mafia friendly. First thing I want to say, from a general standpoint, not solely Baldur's Gate 3 standpoint, stop telling other people how to write their stories. I see it all the time. Why are you including that? That's not realistic. If the creator included it, it is realistic in their story canon and for their setting. It is their story. It doesn't matter if it's a game that's put out for other people to enjoy. It is still the story of the person who made it. Just like with books, it is still the story of the person who made it. And sorry, not sorry, they don't have to cater to you. They want to include the things they want to include. If you don't like it, well, here's what you tell to people who get excluded all the time. Go read something else. Go play something else. And I will even admit that the argument can go the other way. Even if it's erasing or excluding or being a jerk to certain groups, it is unfortunately, and I really want to stress unfortunately, their prerogative to do so. On both sides, critiquing it is fine, but God, please don't use the "this isn't realistic" argument. Because that drives me insane when it's applied to fantasy. Critique inclusion of things you dislike. I don't care. Critique exclusion of things that get erased too often. Or exclusion of people who should be, acknowledged as freaking existing as people and not just, the token, because that gets on my nerves. I'm gonna have to do a little trope talk thingy about that because, ooh, I hate tokenism so much. Because it just drives me nuts. It's just, we're putting this in here for diversity points. And no, you're not doing anything good. No, go away. You're not actually helping because it's always a stereotype. And it drives me up the wall. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Critique is a wonderful thing, but good grief. Don't use the realism argument. I will say I mostly see this phrase come into play, like I said, when it comes to diversity. More often than not, it's someone salty that in a game, movie, some sort of entertainment, the media has the audacity to acknowledge that people are diverse and don't all fit into one mold. And it's so frustrating when people use that. Like I said, here recently I've seen it crop up in regard to Baldur's Gate 3, mostly in accusing the game of being woke propaganda, or propaganda for, as I called the community before, the Alphabet Mafia, because I heard somebody call it that and now it has stuck and I love it so much and now I'm going to use it as much as I possibly can. But I see so many of that being framed, and the dislike for it being included being framed as it's propaganda because it's not realistic for medieval times. I hate that. I hate that with a burning passion, and frankly, I have a question. Explain to me what is so realistic about a fantasy setting that has automatons, magic airships that cross dimensional planes, parasites that turn people into tentacle-faced creatures, a creature that is a lovely winged cat, existing provable deities, a creature that is literally an owl and a bear, an owl bear, goblins, creatures and characters shooting fire and lightning with magic in an assumed medieval time setting, and that's fine. But not straight people cross the line of realism? Please explain it to me in a way that's understandable. Even putting aside the fact that people have existed throughout history who were not straight or fell outside of the gender binary, why is it specifically that crosses the line of realism and that you can't deal with? I said it before, but if the creator included it, then regardless of your argument to the contrary, it is realistic to their story and setting. I'm sorry, but these are the same people who tell those who are diversity positive that if they don't like bigoted stuff in other games or other media, to go play a different game, go watch a different game, then, they don't have to cater to you. So, I just have to say to those same people who are mad over that, go play a different game. Go watch other media. Don't engage with it. The creators of Baldur's Gate 3 don't have to cater to you. It goes both ways, whether you like it or not. Now, getting away from Baldur's Gate 3 in particular, I just hate the argument in general. Honestly. One sec. Okay. But I just hate the argument in general. Even if something is vaguely set in a certain time period, if someone is building a fictional setting, meaning one that they make up, even if it vaguely has hints towards a specific time period, because sorry, not sorry, everything tends to borrow and point towards specific time periods, be it future or past. Why demand that they conform to a certain degree of realism? It most often doesn't become about realism until someone doesn't like something or view something as too woke or progressive. That's where the argument also falls apart. Why is that the line of realism that shouldn't be crossed? Magic is fine. Shape-shifting is fine. In certain fanfic circles, bringing misperceived and misinformation about wolves and wolf packs is fine. But that is the line that shouldn't be crossed. Everything else is fine, but that is the line. That's where we need to keep it to realism. Because, speculative fiction isn't completely about just exploring things and making things up and having fun. Look, I think that's also where it becomes about, frankly, bigotry being challenged. If someone can hide bigotry behind an argument of realism, why wouldn't they? No one likes being called out as a bigot or shown to have some form of prejudice, so it makes sense that they'd fall back on the realism argument. It gives them something where they can be like, well, I'm just being realistic. I'm not homophobic. I'm not, prejudiced against people of other races or skin tones or anything like that. I'm still learning what words I can and can't say on YouTube. Honestly, the word homophobia might get me flagged, whatever. Hopefully I'm far enough in the video, nobody will care. But, they want to say, I'm just being realistic. And that's one reason why I hate that particular argument. I said it before and I'll say it again. If it's someone else's setting, if they wrote it, if they wrote something into it, if they wrote it and they wrote something into it, then it is realistic for their setting. Now, I'm not talking before somebody jumps into, well, realism has a place because, the mechanics of things, or this doesn't make sense in a realistic context. That's not what I'm talking about, and it. Sit down. You're trying to be pedantic. And everybody can see it. Now, I will say, if it's historical fiction, and I do not mean alternate history based. Alternate history based, as far as I'm concerned, falls under the same rules as standard fiction because it is altered history. Things have changed. Of course, they're not going to follow the exact lines of where we are to get to where we are today. But historical fiction that is supposed to be as close as possible to the time periods, maybe do your research and make sure that you aren't, unless the intention is like a forbidden love thing or intentionally crossing a social taboo, make sure you know what you're doing, is what I would say. Because then the realism argument does hold a lot more merit. Again, depending on the subject of the critique. If it can be proved and you just don't like it, or, and this is a very common one that I see about people who assume things about a certain time period, especially in regard to expression and attraction, just because they make assumptions without research and are not knowledgeable enough to be aware, especially of in regard to different cultures, then it still doesn't count. But I want to head into the end of this with at least a little bit of encouragement. Because I know I've been talking about nothing but negative so far in this, and I am aware of that. I'm trying to get better at that. Create what you want. It doesn't matter what someone else thinks. And yes, this goes both ways. People can critique you, though, if you do things that are bad. People can still critique you, like it or not. But it really doesn't matter what someone else thinks. If you aren't hurting someone or doing anything illegal, create what makes you happy to create. If someone tries to tell you that what you're writing or drawing isn't realistic, if you're not trying to be realistic, respond with, so? Look at all the different fictional worlds people have created. How many of those are realistic? How many of those do what they want and make realism be what they want it to be in their setting? Last I checked, a ton of media isn't realistic, and who cares? Who cares what is and isn't realistic? If you're creating what's fun, it might be kind of niche or take a bit to get some traction, but the point is the fun. I think a great example of something that most people would look at and go, oh wow, it's realistic in regard to like at least theoretical stuff and physics and whatnot and the way that tech would have progressed and things like that. Look at Mass Effect. However, it doesn't shy away from the fact that, it's kind of interesting to see a species, an alien, the Asari, who all appear essentially, appear what humans would view as female, and also can mate with any other race and do it through a melding of the minds, for one thing, and that's how they reproduce. Where's the realism? Nobody screams about the lack of realism on that. They can have children with another person regardless of the other person's gender. The child will always be Asari, but still. Where are the arguments about realism on that? I don't see them. And honestly, I want to use that as an example just because I love Mass Effect and I find it very interesting how things I don't see that argument in regard to things like that. And it's just when we get into the realm of, or usually just when we get into the realm of fantasy, which drives me up the wall. Because, again, I know I said it earlier, and I know I'm making a circular argument at this point, but I have to state it again. You've got elves, half-elves, orcs, ogres, goblins. You've got magic and druids and different kinds of magic and different deities that are shown to exist and actively can influence the world, and people actively draw their abilities from, if they're like a cleric, for example. And all of these things exist in this setting. But there are those certain little things that are just, that's what crosses the line of realism? Look, like I said, the point of creating is having fun. And I think that people should continue to create and have fun. Have you guys ever gotten the "that's not realistic" critique? And if so, did it just annoy you? Or did it get to you? Or did it just make you roll your eyes? What other critiques or arguments have you heard that were just frustrating or even just pure BS? Honestly, I'd love to hear, because that stuff gets my brain thinking and gets my brain running more, and I just think it's very interesting to hear about. And as always, I do want to thank you guys for watching, and I definitely want to thank my patrons, Inside Chaos and Salmon, for their support. All of you guys encourage me to keep going and make it possible for me to keep going with constant creation, and I just appreciate all of you so much. Thank you to everyone, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!